Guys, we're here today with Casey Boutwell and Dan Rodenhaver. Casey is the CEO and Dan is the CCO of Envello Medical. I met Dan back in June 2024. I went back on my emails this morning to figure out when we actually first started talking, when he had reached out to potentially do some content creation for a product that they were working on called Envello Core. At the time, I don't think it was called Envello Core. I don't think you had a name for it just yet, but I remember Envello Core came up while we were working on it.
Yeah.
And so I can give you the very technical spiel on what Envello Core is, but I actually used Claude this morning to break it down for me and give me the simplest version of it. And Claude told me a small wearable sensor that shines infrared light through the skin and reads how much oxygen is actually being delivered to the tissue underneath it.
Yeah.
How was that pretty good?
Yeah.
Great job, Claude.
Yeah.
All right, Claude. Good job, Claude.
Claude's hired.
My best friend. So kind of going back on that story. So, Dan, you and I felt each other out for a little bit. There was a couple conversations. We signed an NDA and then decided it was a good fit to work with each other. At that point, you had submitted your CAD files to us. And I remember this was kind of a defining moment for me personally, because when I was working with Sebastian, or still working with Sebastian, and we opened up your CAD files, we shared our screen and we're like, oh, is this it? And it's not an insult to you guys, but it was such a simplistic device. I mean, it's this big. We're like, all right, something has to actually be missing from this file here, which it wasn't. That was the device. And I think that was a really interesting moment for me, because what you had described it does is such a big idea coming from such a small device. And that's also one of the reasons that I wanted to reach out to you guys and have you guys on our podcast, is because I think that you have a really big idea and I want to hear more about how it came about. So with that being said, I want to start this off with, you guys can choose who answers this question, or you can both answer your own way. But I'll ask Casey, if you were at a barbecue and you ran into a new friend or a new neighbor, and he asked you what you do for a living, what your company is about, what is your 1-minute elevator pitch and how you describe what it is that you do?
Envello builds simple medical sensors that tell doctors how well the heart is getting blood to the places it needs to. The reason we have hearts and lungs and blood vessels is to get oxygen into the tissue. And almost all of the major chronic diseases are problems related to oxygen delivery. Cardiac problems, neurological problems, diabetic problems. All of them are dysregulation in oxygen to the tissue. So we have a small sensor that reads that so the doctors can understand how to manage the care.
Right.
Shockingly, there is no other easy way to manage that. The technique exists, but they're big boxes stuck in the hospital and they're expensive. So they're only in certain parts of the hospital.
Yeah. Tim, your description of when you and Sebastian first saw the device, that's completely accurate, right? Like, the world is getting smaller, the world is getting more, less wired. And that's what we've done. We've taken a sensor, a technique that exists in a very complicated thing, and made it into something that's scalable.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I'm curious, what's your elevator pitch?
It's almost the same. So I would say Envello makes a physiology sensor for measuring tissue perfusion, which is actually getting oxygenated blood to the tissues that need it. And it doesn't exist today. We measure like the big pressures, like your blood pressure, but that doesn't tell you if oxygen's getting and blood is actually getting down to the cells, to the capillaries and stuff. And we've started recently telling people that this is like last mile delivery from Amazon. So where, FedEx and UPS were really good at business to business and hub to hub transfer of packages, Amazon was the one that figured out that Tim can get toothpaste and Dan can get a new briefcase and Casey can get a new suit tomorrow on your doorstep. Tissue perfusion is when the package shows up on your doorstep, and there's no other way to manage it or monitor it than what we do right now.
Yeah, that's interesting, guys. We'll circle back on this a little bit later. So like, I can't even tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars I've spent personally on figuring out what my elevator pitch is. So when I meet that new person, to describe my story in seconds, and they're like, oh, yeah, I get that. And this is not a discredit to you guys. I mean, those were long. Like, those were like,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'm already thinking of 15 questions I have to
You
ask
said
you.
1 minute pitch. If you said like 5-second pitch, I give you 5-second pitch. You said 1 minute. 5-second pitch, 5-second pitch. It's a cardiovascular sensor. It tells you how sick you are, so the doctors can act sooner.
I like that. I like that. Now,
1 minute pitch, give 1 minute pitch.
Very long elevator, very tall building.
there's a comfortable thing. All right, fair enough. All right, so let's go back to the beginning, guys. Where did this all start? Who wants to take that?
So my first company was a technology R&D company that worked for the military. And we proposed lots of different ideas. I was familiar with this technique. The technique is called near-infrared spectroscopy. The first company I started licensed some IP from NC State University, where I got my MBA, and it was focused on sleep. So I pitched a bunch of sleep to the military. They were interested in that, but eventually we were funded for fighter pilot monitoring, for combat casualty care, for like a hemorrhage control, for diver monitoring, all these different things. And I started getting basically every civilian doctor I called and said, hey, do you want this? They all said yes. And I was like, this is not helpful. I need to know who I call first. And so I knew Dan from, working in the local community. And I said, Dan, I need some help from a commercial perspective to help me sort of rack and stack all these opportunities. The doctors just say they're interested in everything, but how do I decide where to actually go? So Dan and I started working together about 2.5 years ago, and Dan can elaborate on the market segmentation, positioning, strategy that he applied that moved Envello into this space.
Yeah, when you say the words to physicians, we have a DoD backed sensor that measures perfusion. That's the 1 minute or the 30-second, 5-second pitch to a physician. Every physician gets that. They say, what do you mean you have a perfusion sensor? And then you explain it, right? So at a backyard barbecue is one thing, but when you start telling physicians that you have a fully sort of automated, full-time wireless perfusion sensor, their eyes go, wait. And they tell you 10 ways they can use it.
Actually, what happened is they put the silverware down at the table. There's a little story. He's eating a salad. One of our scientific advisory board members eating a salad. And Dan goes, oh, we have a perfusion sensor. And Dr. David Barron, who's at Cleveland Clinic, Florida, sets his silverware down and goes, no, I'm interested.
Like it was,
hey,
literally he said,
oh man, wait, he's interested now. Dan, what do you say?
He had just gotten off stage and telling for some, this conference we were at with a sort of, keynote speech. And this guy talking to two dudes that barely have any idea what they're doing is like, that's interesting. And that's when we were like, okay, we have something.
You got something.
Yeah.
So go back to the beginning a bit. So wait, so the DoD is your first client. Casey, this is just you at this point, not Dan?
Yeah, so that was the first company. That's NIRSense. NIRSense is the first company. NIRSense continues to innovate and build all these technologies, diver monitors, physical therapy applications, cognitive testing. It has DARPA funding and SOCOM funding and all these other really interesting high speed, low drag military applications. But there are about 1,500 potentially survivable deaths from a battlefield hemorrhage, uncontrolled hemorrhage in the last 25 years. And there are like tens of millions of people that die every year from stuff that similar sensors could monitor. So the Envello brand was spun up to address that, to launch into the civilian space, to move this small technology that, is transferred from NIRSense to Envello to facilitate that commercialization.
Yeah. So are you still working with the DoD? Does NIRSense still do projects for them?
NIRSense definitely does still do DoD applications. Yeah, and the military people know me. They call me and we talk, and I'm supportive of the mission. But there are a lot of other people in our neighborhoods who are dying from stuff that these sensors should be able to help support.
Right. Interesting.
It's a very different, it's a very different application. So when you design something for battlefield hemorrhage or deep water diving or something like that, there's a small number, fortunately, there are a small number of people in the civilian space that need that. Sure, we have trauma, but it's not the same type of blast trauma and like massive hemorrhage trauma, right? We have kids falling off of bikes and stuff like that. And so it's not the same. So, but the technology is sound. And so what Envello's mission is to pivot that to much larger civilian problems, right? And so cardiovascular disease, number one killer of human beings on the planet, has been for the last 50 years, and it will continue to be so for a long time. That is what we do. The cardiovascular system perfuses the tissue with oxygenated blood. We can measure it at the final, like I said, the last mile delivery level.
Yeah, here's a specific example. So NIRSense donated a dozen of these to Ukraine. And in Ukraine, there are a lot of tourniquets used. Tourniquets block blood flow on purpose, and the limb becomes ischemic. It doesn't have enough oxygen. Okay. How does the military manage that? Is a very specific and urgent problem. Civilians have peripheral arterial disease, where they accumulate a bunch of plaques that obstructs blood flow gradually to their legs. They develop limb ischemia, sometimes chronic limb ischemia, sometimes it needs leg amputations. The tissue, the cells in the calf, look the same. They're just caused by different things. There are a lot more people who have peripheral arterial disease than there are people who use tourniquets. The tourniquet is an urgent problem. Peripheral arterial disease is a very important problem. Envello is focused on civilian peripheral arterial disease, leveraging the work that the military funded in NIRSense for the military product.
So, Casey, what came first? Did the contract? Did you have the idea for this first, and then you pitch it to the government,
Yeah.
or the government hired you to solve the problem?
Yeah. So your audience is comprised of two types of founders. Founders who like see a problem and they make a solution to it.
Yeah.
They go fix that problem. And those founders, people understand. You have a problem, here's the size, this is the magnitude, I believe it or I don't, I fund it or I don't. And then there are some founders, there's at least one founder, who just believes that the world shouldn't work like this and that we shouldn't die by surprise from diseases that are called chronic diseases. It's like, I could PhD in physics, I could work on lots of stuff. Flying cars are really cool, but like people shouldn't have chronic heart failure and then come to the hospital and die 4 days later because it got so bad at home. Like that's on me. Flying cars are cool, but I should be working on that. And so I had these ideas that the existing set of vital signs that are easily measurable is insufficient. You can't keep chopping up pulse ox data and heart rate data and say, now I know a person's mood. Now I know like all of these other derived measures that, no offense, Garmin, Fitbit devices, probably have some data behind, but you can't drive medical decisions. And so I said, we got to make better stuff, guys. We got to do something better. And so I pitched all these ideas to the military, and dang it, like they funded a bunch of different ones. So we ended up with this portfolio of like, I don't know, we're working on like brain monitoring, and we're working on like leg monitoring, and we're doing diver stuff, and we're doing fighter pilots. And like, where's the business here? Actually, how do I drive these changes to the people who are dying by surprise, like our neighbors and our parents and our siblings and stuff get hurt and then go to the hospital, and hospital's like, wish I knew earlier. Dang. So it's Dan who's helped me achieve that mission. It's an active commercialization. It's like, just like people say 510K submission is the end of the beginning. There's a whole universe of work that still follows after this. And the first company, NIRSense, is good at going from, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this was possible, to, yeah, it looks like it's possible. And then taking, Envello's focused on, hey, this is possible. What are we going to do about that? How do we get it there to the people? And that's what this second half of work.
So if I'm hearing you right, when you got hired by the DoD, it was for a bunch of ideas, but not this idea. Is that right?
No, that's not exactly true. So you don't get hired by the DoD to do something. You pitch them. They put out these things. Who can do this? Who can do this? Help us solve this problem. And a lot of people have different
specific problems.
I see.
Everybody gives different ideas.
And so
the DoD is starting with the problem, and
right.
people are pitching a solution.
And so NIRSense and Casey specifically pitched lots of things that we could solve that. We could solve that. And lo and behold, they said, sure, give it a shot, man. And winning several of those. So there's like 4 or 5 different tracks for different purposes, solving very specific DoD problems. What we are doing at Envello is taking one of those, the most mature system, that one that is about to be submitted to the FDA, and turning it into a commercial product. Some of the other ones, they're going to be, there's an expression in the military being soft peculiar or DoD peculiar, right? Meaning like it's only ever going to help them. And that some of those technologies will probably stay in that realm. But Envello is like, in partnership with NIRSense, is finding which ones are applicable to large civilian problems.
Which the military wants too, right? I mean, like the military won't let civilians buy F-22s, right? But if everybody bought a tissue oximeter, hey, cool. If the military doesn't have to buy them this year, the company will still be around. And they're probably a lot cheaper for the military because everybody else is buying them also.
They talk of when you win these contracts and when they are looking for companies, they want to know if your solution is what they call dual purpose or dual use, meaning can it solve us? And then can it also go help a larger thing? Because as Casey said, they understand economies of scale. If we're helping tens of millions of people and making tens of millions of devices and they only need, 2,000, it's going to make their 2,000 a lot less expensive and we can be sustainable as a company. They talk about all the time, the military can't be your only customer, will never survive unless you make it battleships or whatever.
Interesting. So I'm curious, and I've never heard this angle from any company that I've talked to, and 100 plus MedTech companies that I've talked to in the last couple of years. Nobody has ever gone the DoD route first and then commercialized a product off of there. Is that like when you talk about a brief or a problem that they're putting out, and just so I understand, is that something like monthly, quarterly, yearly? They're saying, hey, hey world, we have this many problems that need to be solved, and then you can submit an idea. How does that work? And I think that's important for other listeners too, that might have ideas that maybe aren't even thinking about this route to go.
Yeah. So I've been in that space for 8 years. Next Monday is an 8-year anniversary. Like any large group of people, the military is not monolithic, right? Like different people have different needs, different problem sets. I mean, even if you just look at the major services, the Army has a different problem they have to solve than the Navy, and the Navy has a different problem than they have to solve from the Air Force. Even though they all fly jets, they fly them on different missions. So they fly them with different training. They fly them with different, histories and philosophies, and the mission space they're supposed to solve is all different. And so it's not like, at the first of every month, the DoD stands up and goes, here are our 27 things. Everybody constantly is talking about these problems because they're training, they're going in missions, things are going wrong. Hey, we had this pilot come back and he kind of described these symptoms that we don't really know where they're coming from. Hey, we had this diver and man, we were doing a training and kind of went a little different than we thought. How can we get better understanding of what's happening to their body? And so they're all out saying, I don't want to have this problem. Who can solve this problem? I only have money once a year from Congress, but I know I'm going to have money next year, so I should start talking about that. And so it's really an ecosystem of people who talk about research and physiology and all these different things.
Yeah.
I plugged into that, and I, was understood to be genuine in my interest to help support the service members and their families. And so I was kind of pulled into a bunch of different directions.
Yeah, Tim, you may not have heard about it, and frankly, we haven't met a lot of other companies that have been successful at doing what Casey has done from that sort of stand-up way and transitioning to another entity like this. However, I would suggest that most of your founders that you work with and most MedTech founders have gone through a similar process, just in a different way. They've gone through the NIH. Their technologies were funded initially, and then basic research was done through NIH grants. This is very different in many ways, but very similar in many ways, funding mechanisms, non-dilutive. What we encourage people all the time is look at it. It's intimidating if you haven't done it. It's a new language. It's not what your PhD chemistry professor told you was the way you get something funded. But it's a great thing that our government, our military does. It's a great mechanism to build technologies that can then help the broader population. Like, I don't know, the internet. Right?
Yeah.
So this is not new, but it's not common. And so Casey, the thing that I would warn people against about doing it this way is be prepared to learn. The network and acronyms and just the difference between like NIH funding and the military, it's a whole nother world. And the guy sitting to my left is probably the best in the world at deciphering it, but it can be done, and many companies do well. And there's a lot of resources out there to help you. So we're involved with a couple of groups. One is a Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium, which is called MTech. And this is what they do. They help the military find people like us. So they actually have a lot of the contracts. There's another one called Defense Innovation Unit, DIU. There's some other ones that are out there. And we're happy to talk to people about this all the time. So if any of your folks want to talk to us, it's his ability to do this is probably a whole nother marketable skill.
Yeah.
So
That's my fallback.
but
I won't be a carny. I'll just be a
Yeah.
I'll be a
Yeah, I think it's very valuable. Like I said, all the people that I've talked to, all the founders I've talked to, the DoD has never once come up in conversation, and I find it such an interesting angle because so many people struggle to actually get funded, and maybe this is just another angle for them to look
They
at.
should definitely look into it. I think, just to kind of put a pin in this, one of the most critical differences between the Department of Defense funding and, I guess, Department of Homeland Security is kind of similar to this. They don't do grants. There's not like hey, wouldn't it be cool if this worked? It's like, I have this problem. Here are the success criteria. If you achieve it, someone is going to buy this. And so immediately we start talking about customer words. We talk about acquisition stuff and supply chain. Whereas when I talk to NSF or anybody almost in HHS, NIH included, it's like, yeah, give it a try. And then someone will pay for it. Who's someone? I go, I don't know, an investor. And I go, wait a minute, like, they're the one with the money. I need to know their problem in their words. And the DoD says, fewer good guys died. Cool. How many guys died? Okay, a number less than that. Got it.
Mhm.
That's the win criteria. And then it's an acquisition contract. It's not like a give it a shot contract.
Yeah. What's interesting about your angle is it seems like you were approached with real problems, like real world wartime problems that you were tasked to solve, which is versus somebody having an idea that we think works and you can validate with stats and what you think you know, but you're actually building technology off of
Yeah.
real
You might
problem.
be giving me too much credit. So the government goes, here's this problem. And remember, I said there are two kinds of founders on your call here. Those who are like, cool, that's a problem, I'm going to solve it. And those of us who are like, I have this Play-Doh and I have to make this Play-Doh shaped like that problem. And but also, like the cover of the Gödel Escher Bach book, like also shaped like Dan's problem because Dan has money. And like also like shaped like this problem because that guy has money. And so I have this vision of a system of systems that I'm trying to build. And I'm piecing together these resources, it's like sailing, right? It's like you don't go right into the wind. I know where I want to go, but I can't sail straight into it. I got to tack back and forth. So I use some of this contract to get this capability advanced and this contract to get this capability advanced. And NIRSense just won all these freaking contracts at the same time, which sounds great, but then it's like, where am I going? I have all this stuff I got to do. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And it became really interesting and very productive. And we've got 30 people in that company and there are 8 other PhDs besides me. And we're having like a tremendously interesting time addressing these problems that most people think are completely intractable. Then we have this suite of multimodal sensors that have applications all across human physiology and health monitoring. And the Envello is the first test to say, like, can we really actually do this? Can we really actually have people with chronic diseases not die by surprise? Can we reduce clinical uncertainty where it matters most and where it's most urgent?
So that's an amazing segue into the next question is I like to ask, what's the aha moment? What was that one defining moment that you're like, all right, now we need to take this product and we need to figure out how to commercialize it?
I think Dan has the best story there.
Yeah. So when I got here, just like Casey said, there's lots of ideas, right? We could work on human performance and help athletes train better. We could look at neurotrauma. We could look at all things. So I started listing out all the possibilities and brainstorming all the possibilities and make some decision criteria. Why would we focus on one problem or the other? It didn't take very long. And it wasn't just like, what's the biggest problem? Where do we make the most money? It's like, where do we have the most success? And where's the lowest barrier to entry? Where's the biggest problem unsolved and all that? And my 3 criteria were, does anyone care? Can we do it? And can we get paid for it? Right. And then there's a bunch of other ones, but those are the ones that really matter. Right. And it became very clear, very, very fast that what we're monitoring in perfusion, as we said in the beginning, is the purpose of the cardiovascular system. So I started going to cardiovascular conferences. I've been involved in medical device sales and marketing for 22 years. And none of it was really in cardiovascular disease. So I didn't know anything. And so I just started going to these conferences like an attendee and sitting in a conference called Heart Failure Society of America. Yeah, Heart Failure Society of America, HFSA, in Cleveland. I was sitting in this conference. They were and just listening to what they were talking about, how we even the drugs that they give change the delivery of oxygen. And I'm thinking, well, wouldn't a drug company love to know if their drug is actually doing what they think it's going to do in like clinical trials and things like that? So that was my first thought, like, oh, there's reasons why we need to measure this at the end, the actual end delivery. And so I approached one of the panelists on that during that talk. And he's still a good friend of mine. Craig Beaver is still a good friend of the company today. And that's when it started to click. And I said, wait a minute, there's something here. And the more of those presentations I listened to, and the more people I spoke to that said, yes, of course, we need to know if we've actually accomplished the job. It became clear really fast. And now, that was a couple of years ago. It's, like when you and I first started talking, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. To all the folks that might listen to this who are earlier than us. Yeah. But it's like, you got to come, like, it's a great idea in theory, but you got to go prove it. And so
it costs 3 times as much as you think.
Well,
and everybody told us that. And just like you should, listeners, we didn't believe them.
Yeah.
Because if you believed us, you'd stop. Crazy. It's not going to cost 3 times as much as you think. Don't believe me.
But keep going. But the other thing that you find out is like, all our easy problems are solved. And so it's not about the technology. Does it work or not? It's, just doing research. Everyone's busy. Everyone's super busy. So just getting started is hard. Okay. And then once it started, well, these patients are sick and they're scared. Do they really want to enroll in a study? So how, of all the patients that are out there, how many of them are actually going to sign the consent to say, sure, you can, test this product on me? I mean, they're sick and their families are scared and everything else. So research in the space is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started, but there's a long, long road ahead.
Dan, that's a great, setup on the aha moment for you and the validation, but is there like one line or something somebody said to you or a doctor said to you, it's like, yeah, this is it. Like you guys got it. You guys are solving something big.
Yeah. I think it is probably the story that Casey said a minute ago, which is at a different conference called UCARS at the University of Utah. The keynote speaker, who is a world-renowned advanced heart failure specialist, Dr. David Barron at Cleveland Clinic, Florida, in Weston, Florida. We saw him walking, and he had just given a very interesting talk, not scientifically, but just the way he delivered. He was like playing clips of Taylor Swift and invoking lines from her songs and stuff like that. It was just very well done. And so we said, hey, Dr. Barron, we're one of those small stand-up lunch tables at a conference.
After the buffet, you capture it.
And we said, Dr. Barron, would you like to have lunch with us? And we were talking about how in a room full of gray suits, his was the most interesting talk. And so we literally were talking about not us, just him and being human beings and 3 guys standing around. And he said, as Casey said, he goes, so what do you do? And we said, we have a wireless perfusion sensor. And he put his fork and knife down on the table, and he said, now you have my attention. Yeah. And it was that's the pitch, Tim. It was like, that's 30-second pitch. It was a 2-second pitch. We have a wireless perfusion monitor. And like this guy, who was a board member of these other international heart failure associations and whatever, said, now you have my attention.
So I want to put that in perspective. So for anybody that doesn't know what a perfusion monitor is, and tell me if I'm giving the right scenario here. Like you walk into a hospital, you're not feeling well. They admit you, they put you in the bed, they hook up all of these wires to you. But what you're doing is you're taking this device that is, I don't know, was it 6 minutes, 6 inches, 5 inches? There it is. Yeah. And you're just going dink and putting it on there. And it's basically doing what all of that technology that you're laying in the bed with can do. Is that like a good way?
So we don't overstate what we can do.
No apply FDA disclaimer here.
Yeah. So we don't want to overstate what we can do. There are great technologies, but the things that are being monitored, everyone knows what a blood pressure cuff is, right? There are things when you're very sick in a cardiac ICU that go into go in and through your neck and sit in your heart and up into your pulmonary artery that measured pulmonary artery pressure. This is a very well-known, very useful metric. Like if your pulmonary artery pressure is going down, you are very sick. Okay. So That's good, but those are all very invasive. That you have in
Mhm.
the ICU. It requires one-to-one nursing. It requires, uh, some of this is very hard to do, and that is the macrovascular problem. That is there enough cardiac output? Are the big arteries like open and like working? It does not tell you, did the oxygen actually get to the very, very smallest capillaries and down to where cellular oxygenation, like oxygen exchange happens at the cellular level? It does not tell you anything about that. And there is a growing, and that for years has been great. And the physicians and scientists around the world have improved cardiovascular disease management in a innumerable number of ways, and lots of people survive, and they're great. But everyone's always trying to do better, and there's a very distinct, I don't know, changing tide right now, where people are saying, "Wait a minute, there's more." What happens at the microvascular level, where it actually exchanges? What we find ourselves is the military created this thing for a very different purpose. We said we can do this, and there's this wave of like change happening. People want to look at microvascular perfusion, and we're like a surfer on this wave.
Mhm.
And we're like, why is no one else surfing this wave? It's perfect. It's like being in Southern California and being the only one on a wave at trestles. No, like that never happens, right? And so there will be lots of people that fast follow us and do what we're doing.
Yeah.
But we just, I don't know, maybe fortunate, maybe smart, but here we are.
I want to try and explain it in a new way. I'll try a new way to try it. So almost all of the monitoring and sensing that happens in the clinical environment is detailed to understand what is the body doing? What is the pressure? What is the frequency of the heartbeat? What is the shape of the muscle firing electrocardiogram of the heart? And all the doctors need to know that, because they have to know which of these dials to change. So a lot of the sensing is what is the body doing? We're starting at the total other side and going, how's that working? Like, are we getting the stuff where we're supposed to go? Like, everybody's ordering everything on Amazon, but nobody's getting a picture of it on their doorstep. Like, is it actually really getting there? And so we kind of have the total inverse version. I can say, like, it's going down. I can't tell you exactly why, but I can say, like, down is bad, and you should know about that. Okay. So we need both. We need to have this huge funnel of information for the very big brain doctors to know what to do about all this stuff. But you need to have all that stuff on the person right now. Right now, we can just put this on somebody and go, hey, just a yellow flag. This is going down. Want you to know that. You talk to her, please. And now the doctors never did this. They have a tool like this. It's a big box. It's really cool. It's made by some very smart people, but it's really expensive, and it's only in parts of the hospital.
Yeah.
So we're trying to take this and just put it way out there on the edge of the medical system.
Here's another part of it, Tim, that's really important. So the last thing Casey said is, it would trivialize what we've done to say we just made a big thing smaller. We've actually made it better. And so some other very technical podcast, we could talk about that. But what's really important is that these patients that we're talking about that are dying of heart failure and what's called cardiogenic shock and are not perfusing properly aren't always at the largest medical center, heart hospitals. In fact, most of the time they get off their tractor or wherever and they go to the local ER, and they're at a rural hospital. And this is a problem. Heart failure happens around the world, and it's growing, and it's going to grow exponentially. But there just isn't a tool, except like cath labs and other things at these very big hospitals, to discover that this is heart failure. This is cardiac decompensation early enough to save these patients. And so not only do we lose a lot of human beings, which is tragic, but it costs the healthcare system an enormous amount of money, because by the time they do get to definitive care, they're very expensive to try to save. And many of them end up expiring. And we spend a lot of money to only save many, but like still 40% of patients who end up in cardiogenic shock in a hospital don't go home. That's a number that we should not want to live with, right? And so it's the ability to take something small, easy, intuitive that was built initially for trench medicine and expand it to the population that needs it, which is rural medicine. Eliminating inequities of care and all that kind of stuff.
And get the patients where they are. If you think of the body like a mine, basically, all the monitoring that the hospital does now is like, what's the fan speed and the power and the motor of the fan to push the air down there? And this is like, we just brought a bird down with us first.
Yeah.
Okay, bird is not doing okay. we should do something like that. That's
No, dude, guys, it's a big idea, and I gotta give credit to you and to us on one of the best sales tools that we have is the animation that we created for you guys. That's on your website of the guy, and we're seeing through the the vascular system, and he's walking with the your Envello core device on him. Anytime I show that during a pitch meeting or an introduction meeting, people just stop and they're like, what is that? And I do my best to describe it and what it does. And like, you can tell they, not only do they like the animation and what it does and its purpose, but you can tell that they see the big idea, there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what this podcast is for. He needs us to explain. What
Yeah.
is that thing?
What is that?
Casey and Dan to do it.
But you know what? But it's true. But Tim, we worked on that together for a long time. You and Sebastian did a great job on it, and we use it. And I think it's the same. It's as valuable to us as it is to you. We talk about it. We see it, and any investor or somebody who is not clinically oriented could go, "Oh, you're making a sensor," and get it, and say you can see it. I go, I get it. I know what space I'm in. We're not talking about large capital equipment. We're not talking about medication. They go instantly. They get it, and it's a very, very valuable tool.
And it's a game changer. I mean, so when you think about it now, this is a good segue into commercialization and where you guys are at. I mean, this is a when this hits, I'll say when this hits, and when this is in hospitals, like how big is this for the when you think about the cost for the healthcare system? Like how big of a shift is this for them? Because I think about it. You guys have so many different visions for this and use cases. I think about it as I'm admitted into a hospital. Nurse has to put all this equipment on me. That costs time and money, not only for the nurse, but for all the equipment, the timing in the hospital. Like, how does something so simple like this change all of that?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. There's a lot of ways that it could impact the system, but we were just on a phone call yesterday with the major healthcare system, who, when we said that what we're targeting is to reduce length of stay.
Mm-hmm.
In our particular disease state, they said back to us, "Oh, we've done this calculation. If they could reduce length of stay by 1 day,
on average,
so across all disease states, but if they could reduce length of stay by 1 day annually, they would save $130 million."
Wow.
And the patient doesn't have to be there every day.
1 day.
One hospital,
Right?
one hospital. Okay.
One
hospital. Yeah.
One hospital.
Yeah.
Holy.
Okay. So it's enormous, Tim. It's
Oh, wait. Quick question for you though. But is that a bad thing for them? Like they're losing $130 million. Are they going to make up that revenue somewhere else?
That's cost. That's cost to that.
That's cost to them.
Okay. You don't bill by day. Generally, you bill by diagnosis related code.
I see. Okay.
So they get a bolus of money. If they could get the patient to the same quality, nobody's saying kick them out when they're sick, right? They're saying if they get them home earlier and spend less money, they would save $130 million, the same revenue.
Which they're otherwise paying out of their profits.
Yeah.
So this is like 130 real dollars.
And this isn't like somebody trying to convince us. This was them validating what we said we're trying to do. So multiply that by numbers of hospitals across the country and saves the healthcare system. Multiply that by around the globe and different healthcare systems. Now, that was all disease states. Okay, that's not just what we're focused on, but that is our goal. That's the metric.
Yeah.
Same level of quality care or better, faster. And like save those beds. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses, certainly. And if we can save the limited resources we have for the critically ill, some people, no matter what we do, are going to get sick. And if we can save those resources for the critically ill and get the people who are less critically ill or not as sick home and faster, and back to normal life, have a better quality of life, that's good for everybody. That's better for life. It's better for money.
Yeah, absolutely. So where are you guys at in the whole commercialization process right now?
We are
the whole commercialization process.
We're in a couple familiar places. The product will be submitted in this calendar year to the FDA for clearance. We have done an enormous amount of work, and our team works tirelessly every day to make sure that is the best submission we can have. So we expect a fairly rapid clearance from the FDA. And so early next year, we're expecting that, first quarter next year type of thing, we're expecting to be cleared by the FDA to market that first device. In order to market, I don't just need the FDA, I need money. So we're at a fundraising round, right? Everybody needs money. And to your point, Tim, was like, sometimes I get 30 seconds with people and like, I got to figure out how long this elevator is. It may be long, but they might be getting off on the next floor, right? And so we've got to be better at telling our story. So we're working on that a lot. And part of that story is taking this now 45 minutes we've spent together and turning it into a concise story, which, your team works on a lot. And that's the concept for us, is how do we get somebody that says, I want to back this idea? Now, we've been fortunate to have some large organizations, strategic players, to academic societies, to even investors and healthcare systems like we were talking about, say they're interested. But until they sign that check, we are still foot on the gas about getting money in here. Then let's say we get those things ready. So the FDA is ready, the money's behind it. Part of that money has to go to clinical research. And because there are still many ways that we can use this, even in cardiovascular disease is sliced up into many different things. Finding the exact perfect pitch to the first customer and saying, you want this ROI for buying our device? Is it length of stay? How do you prove that? Is it nursing time reduction, nursing burden reduction? How do we prove that? So we still have some of that work to do.
Yeah.
And
So
the very last part is that, and Dan and I we don't have we're not going to press print on like some 3D printer and have these things come out. We have a huge amount of knowledge transfer to the contract manufacturer to make sure that we can actually do the fulfillment and sustainment and supply chain security, all that other kind of actual operation stuff. It's not just, we're way beyond the convince the government this isn't impossible. We're now like, I don't know if we will have to be in the production hell or if we will pay somebody else to be in production hell, but someone's going to have to make a bunch of these so that Dan can get shit.
Yeah.
when he convinces the customer to buy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we actually have another client whose name I won't mention, whose product's absolutely amazing. It's cleared, and now they're having a distribution problem because they can't get enough of the mate.
Yeah.
So it's like
510K is the end of the beginning. For sure.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate there, and we've done a lot of work hand in hand with NIRSense to find a manufacturing partner. We'll be able to manufacture them at the quantities we're anticipating fairly easily. There's always risk, right? There's a lot of PCBs in there, and politics aside, who knows what's going to happen where all the components for PCBs come from.
Yeah.
So there's always risks, but no, I don't think that will ultimately be our challenge. This is not we need to produce millions of them a year type device. We need to get a much smaller number out to critical locations at first, and then ultimately we can grow.
Yeah. It's just out of curiosity. So is the device disposable? So
No,
it's not.
And that's the reason, right? That's the reason why we don't need to make tens of millions of them. This is reusable. It's fully designed to be wiped down, taken off of Dan, and no matter what happens, and then put it on Casey.
It's just a sticker, a double-sided adhesive. You toss that and put it in, wipe it off.
Yeah, really smart. I wanted to go back on the FDA comment that you made. So you're going to submit later this year, early next year, right? And
yes, disclaimers.
And I think just for listeners, and the reason I'm bringing this up is I just read an article the other day about how FDA submissions are taking 30% longer to get through. How do you ensure that you're all buttoned up when you put that submission in?
There's no way to be sure.
Yeah.
The agency has its own reasons for acting the way that it does. In my personal interactions with the agency, they have always been interested in finding the truth, and they have always been professional and intelligent and articulate. They just have a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case that my incentives line up with their incentives. So sometimes they don't go as fast as I want them to. I understand why they don't. But we have always approached them saying, look, we want this thing to work, right? We want this to actually get there. We want people to believe us that it works. We're fortunate that a third of NIRSense has PhDs, so they also can understand science and can follow science and statistics, and we can have an intellectual, intelligent, articulate conversation with the agency. There is no way to be sure. And so we have a host of advisors and consultants around us to say, here's some things that have worked for other clients. Here's some risks that we see in the way you're doing this. You're trying to do two things at the same time. You might trip on yourself. Do them sequentially. Don't go for don't boil the ocean. Go for a specific thing. And so, you build a network of advisors around you. You listen to podcasts like this, and you realize that there are people behind you who are coming up who have some good ideas, and there are a lot of people who fall into the potholes in front of you, and you could talk to them about their experience, and then you just, you give it your shot, just like any other day when you get up.
Yeah, if I was to find if it was just Dan and Casey, and it wasn't when I joined, but if it was just Dan and Casey, several years ago, and when we decided to make a medical device, I would not hire differently because the people that NIRSense has are fantastic and incredibly intelligent. But I think I would encourage us to find somebody with a different level of experience to lead, fill in the gaps of what we don't have.
Yeah.
Right? And so where everything can be learned is another way to short circuit that and say, I have already learned it, and match that with people who can actually do. And I think the learning as we go has slowed us down. I think everybody in NIRSense would admit that. Next time, they're going to be freaking great at it, right? Because they will have done the learning. It's going to be unbelievable. But like that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. But Dan, so what you're saying also is a little bit that if you know the problem you want to solve, then you can go find the people who know how to solve that problem.
Yeah.
That's not how we got here. We got here because I didn't say I have a problem I want to solve. I got here because I said, I have a thing that I need to create. I feel compelled to create this thing. And so the process of creation, we didn't know where it was going to go. And so the team that built that was a team of learners, and they're excellent at learning, and they've been learning. But as Dan said, if Dan and Casey had come together and said, man, people should have a perfusion monitor, that should exist, and we knew exactly what we were going to go for, then yeah, there's a much faster way to get there. You just hire the people who've built the parts of that, and you just assemble it, right? Like, I need a new car, let's get pieces of a car. And we're saying, like, what if you could like float between the continents? Should we like sail, or should we get fill a big bag with air and just let the wind blow it around? And so there's like, we accidentally discovered flight, and then it turns out we're not really good at making a lot of planes. We could just fly.
Yeah.
So they're useful. They're just the different parts of the innovation spectrum. And that's the struggle, is that NIRSense isn't designed to do what Envello is designed to do. And Envello won't be able to do what NIRSense can do. That's why they're different things.
Well, guys, I mean, just to be mindful, we have a couple of minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to end this off on really two questions. Like, what has been the hardest part? And if you can answer these individually, what's been the hardest part for you? And, tie that back into like what advice you might give you. I guess at this point, it's been 8 years, right? 7, 8 years. Like, what advice would you give to that person about this process?
The hardest part for me is probably a personality trait. That I am really interested in lots of different stuff. And I am addicted to learning new things. And so it's very easy for me to be pulled into new spaces. And so building that discipline to stay focused is a constant challenge. It will always be a challenge. And it's a great attribute that can make me seem very agile. I can pop up someplace nobody even knew existed. That's cool. But it also can be an impediment to like being laser focused. And my advice would be recognize the strength that is and the weakness that it is, and balance that in partnerships and teams with people who are very focused, who are laser focused on that, who constantly draw you in, and who, may benefit, if I can say, from some left field ideas to jump us onto a different track and say like, hey, okay, let's laser focus on that for a little bit. And it turns out this is a terrible track. We're going to go back to the first one. Okay, now we've explored that. And we can say this indication for use is not the one we want. Cool. Casey can think about those a little bit in the background, but can still stay focused. My hardest part has been building the discipline to stay focused, which I believe that I'm improving.
Okay, so I couldn't agree with you more. And Dan, before you jump into yours, I mean, that one strikes me personally very hard because I feel like I'm going to be 50 this year. And I feel like I just found my focus about 2 years ago. And I kind of kicked myself for not doing it earlier. I think actually when I first met you guys, I met you under a whole different company, which is our technology company, which kind of weaved in a whole bunch of things that we do from technology to creative. And it wasn't until I personally focused on MedTech, where my career is like just changed. Like it's changed for the better, where like I've got this focus and I'm dialed in on who I speak to, the type of work that I do, and it's sparked a whole new passion and interest for me. And I think it's made me a better person and a much better company. So, I mean, focus, man. I wish the 30-year-old, Tim would have kicked it, in the ass, 20 years ago and
I
said,
think it's a key founders. I turned 30-10 this year, so maybe that's why I finally started to click.
yeah. But,
Yeah. So I would say it's a similar thing, but I can give very specifically the focus that I need. So I'm 52 this year, so maybe I learned it a little early, but it was about the same time, Tim. So, when transitioning something from one stated purpose, or like the story we've told now, from NIRSense over to Envello, it is the focus that I've had to maintain is on what is the real market mover. It is great for David Barron to say that's interesting, but David Barron doesn't buy the product. His hospital does, right? And to have sort of the cold reality that like we all want to help people. We wouldn't be in this business if that wasn't just part of our nature. We could go develop and sell anything else, but there's something rewarding about helping people. But that's not what moves the needle. What moves the needle is, are you as good or better than what the medicine being provided before?
Mhm.
And does it save the hospital money? And that's a cold reality. And you have to keep that focus and that discipline to say, will a hospital pay me money? Or will a consumer, if you went that route, or will someone actually depart with their dollars for your thing? And if you can't gain the evidence that is true and you just hope that's true, you're fooling yourself. You've got to be able to prove it.
It's also really hard to prove until you have the thing, right? So
Right.
like, sometimes you have to have the thing to get them to give you the money, or to find out, man, they just said a bunch of nice words to you.
So,
I'm gonna give them.
so as we talk about in our funding challenges, the biggest thing that will hold companies back from raising significant funding is traction. Right.
Yeah.
So that's easy to do if you're building an app or a website or something like that. Like, my son can even code using Claude or whatever. Right. So it's easier now than it has been ever. And you can get some, market movement, but in a medical device, in a product, to actually prove that someone will depart with their dollars, or an institution will depart with their dollars for your thing and continue to buy it, you have to have some level of minimum viable thing. It's not trivial. So it's that timing, it's that thing, but you have to be, anyone who's starting on this journey needs to be extremely honest with themselves.
Yeah.
Cool
Yeah.
does not cut it.
No, I get it, man. I think you can relate that to any industry. I can relate that to what I'm doing on the tech side for new. You got to be honest with yourself, and sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow. That maybe what you have is not marketable. It's not able to commercialize it. It comes down to just being honest with yourself, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times that's just like letting go of the pride that you have and all the time that you put into building something.
But at the same
putting your
time,
hands up saying, shit, this is not right. Or maybe auditable and saying, all right, this is how I actually make it right.
that's the important piece. That's why the beauty of our system, and entrepreneurs are everywhere, certainly in the United States, but around the world, you got to have that spirit. If it's not right, you either can choose to quit or pivot. And, I think we've done so far a pretty good job of that. You certainly have. And, as long as we keep doing that, we'll make progress.
Yeah.
We're trying, man. We're
One of our
trying.
engineers called me yesterday and said, hey man, I don't think I can do this thing that I told you I was going to do. And he felt really sad about it. And I was like, look, man, people look at us like we know what we're doing. Most of the stuff I tried doesn't work. I just keep doing it. And some of the stuff, you just do all the stuff and then it works. And as you stay focused, then you iterate really quickly.
Yeah. No, it's same with us. I mean, the hard part for us is we're not funded. So everything that we do and all the risks that we take come out of my pocket. And that's the part that really hurts.
Yeah.
But
Helps with focus though.
I have lots of focus. Yeah.
Focus.
Well, guys, we're at time here. I just want to say, I'm really glad that I met you guys a couple years ago and had the opportunity to work with you. And I'm really excited to see where you take this from the sidelines. And it's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Tim. It's been great.
You got it, boys. We'll catch up soon.
Sounds good.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Your story is the foundation for all your sales collateral. It's the starting point for building out your whole sales system. And most MedTech founders never fully tell it. That's why I built this show. Every founder who comes on walks away with a 10-page founder's pitch deck. Ultra concise, grounded in their own story. If you're a MedTech founder, there's 3 ways to get in. Come on the show, share your story, we'll build a deck together. Or schedule a one-on-one session. Myself and our team will help you uncover your story. If you'd rather do it on your own, all good. Just email me at tim@viewlab.com and I'll personally send you our MedTech Founders Playbook, a 5-step process for uncovering your story and shaping it into one that actually sells. Either way, reach out because your story needs to be told and we want to help you do it.